You need to work towards acceptance, sort of coming right back to where we started in terms of acceptance being one of the most crucial pieces of successfully coping with your chronic illness. So in order to work on acceptance, you need to be able to identify your priorities. So when Elaine started investing all of her limited energy just in work, she never consciously thought about her priorities. She didn't sit down and think about, okay, if I only have this much energy, where should I put it? What would I want to do with that limited amount of energy? That is what you're going to need to do in order to start moving towards greater acceptance. You need to identify your priorities. What is most important to you? What are your core values? It's interesting that very few people can identify what a core value is to them or what's important to them. And the reason most people can't do that is because we simply don't think about our lives in that way. We sort of always just unconsciously or automatically made decisions about how to spend our energy. We've never really thought about, well, if I had limited energy, what would I do with it? So actually identifying priorities and core values takes a while. It takes some work. It takes some discussion to figure out what they are for you. Once you have identified priorities, you need to take responsibility for making changes in your life. Again, if you've only got so much energy in a day because your chronic illness is sucking up all the other energy, where are you going to spend it? What's important to you? How are you going to invest it? You need to reinvest that limited time and energy into those things that are important. If you invest your time and energy in important, valuable things to you, I guarantee you your mood will improve. You will start to feel better because you will be doing things that are important to you. You will be doing things that are enjoyable to you. Keep in mind that change is an ongoing process. Okay, so again, it's not all or nothing. You don't write down your list of priorities and the next day everything changes. It's a process where you start to reinvest, taking time and energy away from activities you don't prioritize and putting it into activities you do prioritize. The other thing that's really important to remember is that change is not permanent. Maybe at this point in time, in an early stage of your illness or in a flare-up stage of your illness, you've got even less energy, even less resources, and so you have to be even more narrow in what you choose to invest in. But that doesn't mean that's always going to be that way. Maybe if you instead prioritize your health and prioritize things that are important to you, you're going to actually start to feel better. You're going to be able to manage your condition better. You're going to be able to have more positive emotions. And as you start to feel better, you're going to have more energy, which means, oh, I can add something to my list. I can have another role come back in. So change is always fluctuating. So again, if we put Elaine's chart back up and we ask her to actually think about her priorities, if we look at what she decides is going to be her new normal, it comes back to family again. That was her priority before she was ill. It's still her priority. She just didn't realize that she wasn't focusing on it. So now family becomes her priority again. In order to invest her energy in family, she needs to make some substantial changes. She realizes that I can't be working full time if I want to use my energy for what is actually important to me. So she decides to job share. She works half-time only, shares with another teacher who only wants to work half-time, meaning she can now use that energy for her family as she wishes. Not only that, she can start to reintroduce some of the other things that she has given up in order to survive her work life. Now, for Elaine, She could do that. Financially, her husband worked full-time. She didn't financially necessarily need the money of a full-time salary, so she had that benefit. That comes into prioritizing, right? If her family depended on her salary, she would have to prioritize work more highly. So she would have to continue to invest her energy in that. But again, it's about making those conscious decisions and not just letting things happen. You have to make the decision, is this good for me and should I do it? One thing that you need to do in order to manage the emotional distress is you need to focus on today. You need to focus on the now. So what that means is at the end of the day, when you're sort of evaluating your day, was it a good day or was it a bad day? You need to not evaluate yourself and your accomplishments in comparison to your accomplishments before you were ill, because that's a really unfair comparison. You need to be evaluating yourself in the context of the here and now. Given I have this illness, given that today my pain was a 6 out of 10, how do I feel about what I accomplished today? How do I feel about how things went? You want to focus on the here and now, not on the past, not on comparisons to the way things were. You also don't want to project yourself into the future, because you don't know what the future is. So you can only ever live in the current moment. So again, invest your energy in what you can do now, not on what you've lost, or not on what you're not able to currently do. Learn and practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is essentially, it comes from Buddhism. It's a Buddhist philosophy of living in the now. It's about not worrying about the future and not focusing on stuff from the past. So it's very in keeping with the process of acceptance and helping you with that process. I'm going to put up a list of resources at the end, a couple books to recommend to help you learn mindfulness. It's actually, if you just did a search on the internet on mindfulness, you will find tons of information on it, because it's a very strong movement in the healthcare system right now to teach people mindfulness, because we know it helps improve chronic illness. Consider keeping a gratitude journal. I'm coming back to this whole idea of journaling and writing, because it is tremendously therapeutic. If you end every day writing down 3 or 4 things that you are thankful for, you end your day feeling good. And there's always something you can find in your day to be thankful for. Even if it's just to be thankful that your pain was a 6 today and not an 8 like it was yesterday. There's always something to be thankful for. Again, evaluate your success, your accomplishments, based on your current context, your current circumstances. Do what you can to involve your family. Family often feel very separated from the person who has an illness. A person with an illness often sort of becomes an island unto themselves. They don't want to burden other people, so they don't want to talk about things. They don't want to make other people feel sad or bad or anything, so they try not to share their pain. But if your family does not know what you're going through, all they feel is, you've cut me out, and I don't know why you've cut me out. Have I done something wrong? Do you not love me anymore? What's going on? So talking and engaging family is really important. The other thing I want you to keep in mind about family is that just like you are going through a process of accepting, everyone in your family has to go through the same process. They're not going to go through the process the same way you do, because everybody goes through it in their own way, but they have to go through their own process of acceptance. So if I'm a spouse and my husband has a chronic illness, I have to accept that maybe we can't do all the things we once planned. I have to accept that the nature of our relationship has to change a bit, or our activities have to change. So they are also working through an acceptance process, which again is why the communication process is so very important. So you can both talk about what it's like going through that process. Family roles have to be redefined. So maybe you used to be Superwoman who worked and cleaned and cooked and took the kids to all their activities and did all of that. Or maybe you were Superman who worked and mowed the lawn and shoveled and took the kids to all their activities and cooked and whatever. When you have a chronic illness, you can't be super anything anymore. You can't do everything, which means those things you used to do in the family, somebody else has to pick up those activities. So everybody's renegotiating. Everybody's figuring out, okay, so if you're not going to cook anymore, I'm going to cook, or if you're still going to cook, I'm going to do the groceries and have everything ready for you, or whatever. But you can't negotiate those roles if you don't talk about them. Education for families is really important. They need to know what the illness is. They need to know what can be expected from the illness, but they also need to be educated about the emotional experiences of the illness. They need to understand why you're so irritable or why you need to make certain changes. The more they know, the more supportive they can be. So I always extend an offer to all of my patients for them to bring in their family for at least one session, just so we can do basic education about what chronic illness is and how it impacts families. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up by talking about when the emotions have become too significant, too big to handle on your own, and how you recognize that fact. So as I've said, emotional upheaval while you're learning to adjust to a chronic illness, perfectly, absolutely, 100% normal. Rates of depression, quite high. Rates of anxiety, quite high, but only for a brief period of time. It's a phase that people have to work through, and they normally come out the other side doing quite well. A lot of people, in fact, the vast majority of people, work through that process with very little assistance. So with advice from their physician or advice from family and friends. But there are some people who get stuck in that phase. In the normal phase, the emotions are transient, they come and go. Some days are better, some days are worse. And they focus really on the illness and on the losses associated with the illness. But if you become stuck in those emotions, which means they're not transient, you don't have good days and bad days, you only have bad days, that's a good indicator that you've gone beyond the point where you can do it all on your own. That's a good indicator that some help is probably going to be beneficial. If your emotions, your emotional reactions start to interfere with your daily functioning, so if you're too anxious to get up and face your day, you just want to pull the covers over your head, it's a good sign that you might need some assistance. If you're too sad and depressed, don't have the energy to get up and shower and start your day, or you can get up, but you don't really want to go out of the house, you don't want to face people, another good indicator that it's gone beyond the normal level. I want to emphasize that the earlier you get help with stuck emotions, the faster you start to feel better. So one of the unfortunate things is that people who come to see me often don't come until they've had their chronic illness for years and years, and they've been depressed for years and years. And if you've been depressed for 2 years before you even seek out help, it becomes very ingrained, and it becomes a very big part of your life. And so it's that much more of a struggle to work your way out of. It can be done, but it's harder work. So if you can catch it early, you're going to have an easier path out of the depression or the anxiety or the anger or whatever emotion it is you're experiencing. Even if it's gone on a while, we can help you work through it, and you can come out feeling very positive on the other side. It's just going to take longer. So reach out for assistance sooner